With all this talk about drones in New Jersey, I decided to follow up on the Flying Machine Man. I briefly mentioned him in a prior video. We were reading Chapter 1 from the book The Great Oil Dorado when we learned the news of the oil strike in Titusville. It had been buried on page 5 of the New York Tribune on September 13, 1859. It was next to a story about a man named Cook who was planning to launch a flying machine the following year. This story was printed the very same day and week that the United States was experiencing the solar storm that would later become known as the Carrington event. Is it a coincidence that the greatest industrial event to take place in our world's history occurred at the same time as the powerful electrical current that was pulsating across the nation? And is it more coincidence that the inventor Daniel Cook, who was a proclaimed master of electricity, had invented a device for perpetual motion, a dynamo that produced constant electric current without a battery during this greatest solar storm in history? Welcome to Liberty Street, where we walk into the past and into the early days of oil to talk about the men and women who participated in the discovery. They were our first oil millionaires and those who left a legacy that paved our streets of black gold. This is a history channel where we search for our ancestors who were instrumental in oil development and tell and document their stories as part of our family tree. Tonight, I will tell you the story of Daniel Cook, who, like Colonel Edwin Drake, died penniless and disappeared into history without much of a trace. Just like the old oil derricks and rusted-out pumping jacks in Venango County, the remnants of Cook's flying machine can be found across the Pennsylvania state line in Richland County, Ohio, where it was once left among the elements to rust and decay. By the time Drake had struck oil, the company he was prospecting for had already been reorganized as the Seneca Oil Company of New Haven. The Pennsylvania Rock Oil Exploration Company came from the mind of George Bissell, a flamboyant New York lawyer. Young Bissell and his partner George Townsend hired the old retired railroad man, Edwin Drake, to travel to western Pennsylvania on April Fool's Day to purposely drill for oil in 1858. While the aging Drake was spending his days digging in northwest Pennsylvania and searching for tools, shovels, and picks, and for a workman to believe in him and to assist with his folly, Captain Taggart was flying his machine over the skies of New Jersey. Taggart's machine ascended on Wednesday, October 30th, from the thatched cottage garden in Jersey City. It appears he was charging for the event and had reserved 5,000 seats for 50 cents each, and standing room only was 25 cents. His aerial show would pass over the city in different directions and was intended to convince the spectators that he could navigate the air as well as the water with his steam engine. His ascension was to be as easy and safe as a man can sit down in his parlor. Now, I'm not sure what happened between then and November 4, but reportedly on that day, his large balloon with an attached car or basket descended a few days later near the house of Jonathan Gildersleeve, who lived at Clay Pits, New Jersey. The basket became entangled in the fence of a lane leading to their home, and the balloon and the basket, I guess, swayed gently over the barn in the wind above it. Of course, it caused a surprise to the family, and they ran to it and worked to secure by cutting a large opening in the balloon to let the air out. Just as the air began to escape, another young family member arrived in the dark with a lighted candle to see what was going on. The combustible gas ignited and it exploded, and it knocked over the family and burned two of the men on the hands and face. The balloon was torn and burning to pieces, and the machinery in the car was damaged. The flames also caught the fence on fire, and it was spreading towards the barn. The family saw the potential for more loss and destruction, and the boys began to tear down the fence so that the flames would never reach the barn. Now, Taggart wasn't the only one with his eyes on the sky. A search of the newspapers in the 1850s show much interest in aerial navigation, and flying machine development was on the rise in other parts of the country. Working away in Mansfield, Ohio on his flying machine was Daniel Cook. The only reported difference between Taggart's machine and Cook's was that Cook claimed his could be propelled by electricity. Daniel McFarland Cook was born in 1820 in Mansfield, Ohio. He grew up on a farm with thousands of sugar brush trees, and eventually he invented the sugar cane evaporator. He found a way to improve the slow process of boiling maple sap to syrup. His evaporator was fast, and it could draw off the dense sap into granulated sugar. I'm not sure why, but he sold the rights to his machine away, and he never personally sold any of his equipment. While this invention was very successful, his only folly appears to be his rose-colored flying machine that looked a lot like a diving bell or a 10-foot bullet with portholes. In August 1859, he built a house to disguise his airship so he could carry on with his work, and he named his ship the Queen of the Air. He was quoted as saying, "By this invention, I expect to navigate the air at will with inconceivable velocity. The car will be 12 feet long and over a half feet in diameter, and of a true pointed ellipse. It will be elevated, propelled solely by the forces of the electric engine without hydrogen gas, steam, fans, or rudders." He went on to say that I confidently expect to finish the experiment during the coming winter, and next summer I will make a voyage to San Francisco, and I will have breakfast there and lunch there, and I will return on the same day for supper, making the entire trip in 12 hours. Now, in August 1859, when Drake and Billy Smith were working away on Oil Creek, the New Haven boys had already given up on them, and they had given up on the project. Drake had come up empty-handed. It had been a year since Drake left for northwestern Pennsylvania, and he had spent all of the firm's money. The banker Townsend was reluctant to send any more, and he encouraged Drake to return to Connecticut that summer. And Drake was considering it, as he was running out of hope. He turned his attention towards prayer. After all, it was Sunday, and in those days not much work took place on the Sabbath. He was not well, and he took to his bed as daylight began to depart at about 7:25 p.m. When at that time a rose-colored band appeared in the east, and on the northeast horizon up to and beyond the North Star. In about 10 minutes the band had advanced its south line and spread to the west and north, with a development of streamers. This continued until about 8 o'clock, when it had become somewhat diffused and faded. Then, around 8:35, the phenomena began again. A great abundance of streamers from the east, north, and west, pointing on every side to magnetic pole, and appeared a gorgeous corona where the streamers met and terminated. There were vast amounts of clouds of red, yellow, and yellow-white, which were dense and low in the southern sky, where they lay entirely stretching from east to west and resting its southern line nearly on an even and level line across the whole sky, cutting through the bright star Antares. It remained stationary until about 9 o'clock, when a single brilliant cloud, similar in texture to that above it, say 8 degrees long and 2.5 broad, moved lengthwise and along a level line from the meridian to the west, crossing in its course the two stars, Gamma and Lambda, in the scorpion's tail. In 2 minutes, it moved some 20 degrees and was lost behind the mountains. It ended with a corona of more glorious splendor than before, and just before 3 a.m., the action picked up again. It was less glorious, perhaps, than what appeared at 10 o'clock, but this time a dome formed by the fine lines of light which set on every side and reached entirely to the corona. The New Haven News reported that never, in memory of any man, had seen such an event. The temperature was 49 degrees on the early August morning. The day before, it had been a high of 70 degrees, and the temperature fell constantly during the aurora. The telegraph lines were surcharged to a great degree from here to England. As the greatest solar storm of our history was recorded in the New Haven newspaper, the story of oil was buried in the pages of the New York Tribune, only to be shared with the story of a man who claimed that he had solved perpetual motion. The Cincinnati Gazette reported that they witnessed a demonstration of Cook's perpetual electric generator and engine, and Cook claimed that he could start the engine and it would never stop, and he claimed it could run any machine in the world. All right, now about this time, the news of the oil finally made its way to Bissell in New Haven, and soon the lawyer was making his way by train to Titusville to claim his victory. The South Improvement Boys were in the oil region by the late 1860s, and Standard Oil was formed in 1870. The following year, it's alleged that Cook patented his perpetual motion device, claiming that it used 10% of force, leaving 90% of power to be used for light or heat, and it would cost nothing to run. Daniel McFarland Cook, who was a master of electricity, in 1871 his patent, number 119825, on the device that produced constant electrical current without the aid of a battery, is still a curiosity today. Cook's story does have a sad ending. Deep in debt, he lost his farm to a company that may have profited from his ideas. What's interesting is I typically end up finding an oil connection to just about anyone that I've been asked to research. Now keep in mind when you are doing your own family research in that time that you will likely find one relative or two stomping around in the mud looking for oil. It was like the California gold rush and a quick means to get rich. So just about everyone has someone in their family tree, part of the oil excitement. But it appears that Cook had no interest in the oil boom and was hyper-focused on electricity and how to harness it. I could not find him on a census, a city directory, or even a newspaper for the region, which is odd for any inventor at that time. By all accounts, it appears his eyes were on the sky and he had no interest in digging in the ground. The rest of this story is pure speculation, as I really didn't have much time to research Cook as I would have liked. Without my laptop, I am limited to what I can do now. But try to imagine this. It's a hot August night, and he is out in his workshop working on his flying machine to prove to others that it would take flight and that it could control its direction and travel at high speeds, all with the use of electricity. not steam. Can you imagine his surprise when the evening sky lit up without warning? What must he have thought when the aurora took place? Was there a band of energy that he could have tapped into that night? If the current was as powerful as they say, enough to power telegraph machines without batteries, could he and did he harness it? Of course, there are lots of rabbit holes that you can go down that claim jet fuel is not what keeps planes aloft, and that somehow we tap into an electrical current when the plane reaches certain altitudes. Of course, this is not my specialty. I know nothing about planes or electricity or even oil for that matter. But I do prefer to focus on oil history. So these are just thoughts. And apparently, the reporter who saw Cook's perpetual motion engine and claims that he was a witness to it, he believed in it. I feel there must be something to his claims. After all, Nikola Tesla was busy working away in his laboratories with a focus on electricity. What's ironic is all three men ended up impoverished, with their ideas later patented and assumed by others. Now, I don't know if Cook's flying machine ever took flight. It does not appear in the newspapers, and many searches I couldn't find any mention of it. Now, I do understand that the remnants of his machine can be seen today in a museum in Mansfield, Ohio. What I did find was many flying machine stories and a lot of interest in aerial navigation, and most were using steam to propel their balloons through the sky. Well, that's all for now, but if you would like to hear more about Cook, please click the link in the description below. I found a video while I was researching him, and this short video can tell you more about him and all his inventions and does more justice to the man than I could ever do with just 1 or 2 days worth of research. Like always, if you need assistance with your family tree in the oil region, please reach out to me. The more friends we have walking down Liberty Street, the better. Tomorrow I will finish up Chapter 2 of Hildegard Dolson's book, The Great Oil Dorado. It will be a slow-moving Sunday stroll into history. See you then!